Before this goes any further, everyone deserves to know the truth about my daughter, my mother announced into the microphone she'd grabbed from the startled DJ, her voice carrying across the reception hall with the theatrical projection of someone who'd been rehearsing this moment. I've stayed silent for too long, watching Vivian deceive everyone around her, and I won't let this marriage begin on a foundation of lies. My relatives on her side of the room nodded knowingly, smirking with the anticipation of a public humiliation they'd clearly been promised, while my husband Daniel's family sat frozen in confused horror. But why did my mother's confident expression falter when she noticed Daniel's boss, a distinguished older gentleman named Richard Harrington, rising from his seat and walking purposefully toward her, and why did whatever he whispered in her ear make her drop the microphone and flee the reception in tears? The microphone hit the floor with a deafening thud. My mother's heels clicked rapidly across the marble as she actually ran, toward the exit. The room sat in stunned silence. Richard picked up the microphone, adjusted his tie, and smiled at the 200 guests. My apologies for that interruption. I believe the father of the bride was about to give his toast. My father stood slowly, looking between the exit where his wife had disappeared and Richard's calm expression. Something passed between them, recognition, perhaps, or warning. Yes, my father said quietly. I was. The history my mother had planned to reveal was complicated, painful, and not what she thought it was. I'd grown up as the family disappointment. My older sister Victoria was the golden child, beautiful, compliant, successful in all the ways our mother valued. I was the difficult one, the one who asked questions, the one who didn't fit the narrative our mother had constructed about our perfect family. The truth my mother had prepared to share was a version of my teenage years that painted me as troubled, dishonest, and unworthy of the successful man I was marrying. What she didn't know was that Richard Harrington knew a different truth. A truth about her. I'd met Daniel at his company's holiday party 3 years before our wedding. He was a rising executive at Harrington Financial, a boutique investment firm run by Richard Harrington, a man who built his company on principles of integrity and who personally vetted every senior employee's character. Daniel and I had connected immediately, bonding over shared experiences of difficult family dynamics. He'd grown up with an alcoholic father, I'd grown up with a mother whose need for control had bordered on pathological. She rewrites history, I'd explained during one of our early conversations. Whatever happened, she'll tell a version that makes her look good and me look bad. My whole childhood was gaslit. I'd remember things one way, and she'd insist they happened differently until I questioned my own memory. That sounds exhausting. It was, will be forever, probably. The engagement had triggered my mother's worst instincts. She couldn't stand that I was marrying better than Victoria, whose husband was perfectly nice but worked a middle management job without particular distinction. She couldn't accept that the difficult daughter had found happiness while the golden daughter's life was merely adequate. Her campaign to undermine my relationship had started subtly. Are you sure he knows everything about you? Men from good families have certain expectations. Have you told him about high school? About the incident? I just want to make sure you're not building this on a lie. It wouldn't be fair to him. The incident she kept referencing was a period during my junior year when I struggled with anxiety and depression, a direct result of her emotional abuse, though she'd never accept that characterization. I'd seen a therapist, taken medication briefly, and emerged healthier and more self-aware. In my mother's narrative, this became Vivian's breakdown and proof of my fundamental instability. Daniel knew everything about my history. I'd told him myself. Your mother called me, he mentioned one evening, 6 months before our wedding. Of course she did. What did she say? She said she was worried about me. That she wanted to make sure I knew what I was getting into. That you had a history of emotional problems and dishonesty. And what did you say? I said I appreciated her concern but that I knew my fiancé better than she apparently did. Then I hung up on her. She won't stop. No, she won't. But that's her problem, not ours. What I didn't know was that Daniel had mentioned the call to Richard. Richard Harrington had a personal interest in protecting his employees from manipulation. His own first marriage had ended when his mother-in-law's interference destroyed the relationship, a painful lesson that had made him vigilant about toxic family dynamics. Tell me about your fiancé's mother, he'd asked Daniel. Daniel had told him everything. The gaslighting. The favoritism. The constant undermining. The campaign to sabotage our relationship. Richard had listened carefully. Then he'd made some calls. Richard Harrington hadn't built a successful financial firm without developing an extensive network. That network included private investigators, background researchers, and professionals who could uncover information that people preferred to keep hidden. What he discovered about my mother was far more damning than anything she planned to reveal about me. The affair she had when Victoria and I were children, the one she hidden from my father for 23 years. The money she embezzled from the charity organization she chaired, $47,000 redirected to personal accounts through creative bookkeeping. The lies she'd told her own family about her background, the prestigious college she'd claimed to attend, the wealthy family she'd invented, the entire fictional history she'd constructed. My mother had built her life on deception. And she projected that dishonesty onto me, the daughter who'd inherited her eyes but not her willingness to lie. Richard had compiled the information but hadn't shared it with Daniel or me. "It's insurance," he told Daniel. "In case she tries something at the wedding. I've seen people like her before. They can't stand watching someone they've diminished succeed." "You think she'll try to ruin the reception?" "I think she'll try something. People who need control that desperately don't give up easily." The plan had been simple: if my mother behaved, the information would never surface. If she tried to humiliate me publicly, Richard would intervene. What he whispered to her at the reception was brief and devastating. "I know about Marcus. I know about the charity money. I know about everything. If you say another word, every person in this room will know too." Marcus was her affair partner, a name I wouldn't learn until later, when Richard explained what had happened. The charity money was her secret shame, embezzlement she'd covered up for 15 years. Everything was the accumulated weight of a lifetime of lies about to crash down on her. My mother had planned to expose my supposed secrets. Instead, she'd been confronted with her own actual ones. She'd run because staying meant facing a reckoning she wasn't prepared for. The reception continued after her departure, though the energy had shifted. My father gave his toast, shorter than planned, visibly shaken by whatever he'd witnessed or suspected. Daniel's parents spoke warmly about welcoming me to their family. Friends made speeches that acknowledged the awkwardness without dwelling on it. "Your mom had to leave suddenly," people murmured. "I hope everything's okay." I nodded, smiled, pretended to be concerned. But inside, I felt something I hadn't expected: relief. She'd tried to destroy my wedding day. She'd failed. And whatever Richard had said to her had accomplished something I'd been unable to achieve in 28 years of trying. He'd made her stop. The truth emerged gradually over the following weeks. My father called me 3 days after the wedding. "Your mother won't talk to me. She's locked herself in the guest room and won't explain what happened at the reception." His voice was confused, worried, still operating under the assumption that his wife was the victim of some misunderstanding. "Do you know what that man said to her?" "Richard Harrington. Daniel's boss." "What did he say?" "She's been crying for 3 days." "I don't know exactly. But I think he knew things about her that she didn't want revealed." "What things?" "What could possibly?" He stopped. I heard something in his silence, a dawning recognition, perhaps. The beginning of questions he should have asked decades earlier. "Dad, I think you should talk to her. Really talk to her. Ask her about things she's never wanted to discuss." The marriage that had seemed solid from the outside began to unravel. Whatever my father confronted my mother about, and I never learned the full details, it destroyed the foundation of their relationship. The affair came out first, I learned later. Then the financial irregularities. Then the accumulated lies about her background, her family, her history before she'd met my father. Everything she'd hidden for 40 years surfaced in the span of 2 months. They separated before Christmas. Divorced by spring. My mother called me once during this period, her voice unrecognizable, stripped of the control and superiority that had always defined her. "You ruined my life." "I didn't do anything, Mom. I just got married." "That man, he had no right. He had information. Information about things you did. That's not my fault. I was going to tell the truth about you. About your problems. About high school." "I know. And he was going to tell the truth about you. Seems like you had more to hide than I did." She hung up. We haven't spoken since. The full story came from Richard himself, over dinner a month after the wedding. "I should probably explain what I said to your mother." "You don't have to." "I want to. You deserve to understand what happened." He laid out everything his investigators had found. The affair with a man named Marcus during the years my sister and I were in elementary school, a relationship that had lasted nearly a decade. The charity embezzlement, carefully documented through financial records she thought were destroyed. The fabricated personal history that had fooled my father and his family for their entire marriage. "I told her I knew everything," Richard said. "I told her if she said another word about you, I'd share what I knew with every person in that room." And she ran. She ran. She knew the truth would destroy her, and she chose to flee rather than face it. "Why did you do this? Why go to all this trouble for your employee's wife?" Richard was quiet for a moment. "Because I've seen what people like your mother can do. My first wife had a mother just like her, controlling, dishonest, willing to destroy anything she couldn't dominate. She poisoned our marriage with lies and manipulation until there was nothing left to save." He paused. "I couldn't save my own marriage. But I could protect Daniel's. And I could protect you." The aftermath reshaped my understanding of my entire childhood. My mother had spent my life convincing me that I was the problem, difficult, dishonest, unstable. She projected her own character flaws onto me so consistently that I'd internalized them, spending years in therapy trying to understand why I was so fundamentally broken. I wasn't broken. I'd never been broken. She was the one who lied. She was the one who deceived. She was the one who built her entire life on a foundation of fabrications. The truth she planned to reveal at my wedding was just another fiction, her version of events, designed to maintain her status as the wronged mother of a troubled daughter. Richard's information had shattered that narrative permanently. Victoria called me 2 months after the divorce was finalized. We'd never been close, my mother had cultivated competition between us rather than connection. But something had shifted. Mom's been telling me her version of what happened. How that man at your wedding destroyed her marriage with lies. They weren't lies. Everything Richard said was true. Documented. I know. I found some of Dad's papers. The affair, Marcus, he was around when we were kids. I think I actually remember him. He came to a few of our birthday parties. She brought her affair partner to our birthday parties? Apparently. And the charity thing, there's going to be an investigation. Someone anonymously reported irregularities. Someone meaning Richard? Probably. Mom's going to face actual consequences for the first time in her life. How do you feel about that? Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Relieved. Is that terrible? She spent my whole life comparing us, making me feel like I had to be perfect to earn her love. And the whole time, she was the one who was fake. Everything about her was fake. I know. I spent years thinking I was the liar because she kept insisting I was. I'm sorry I believed her. I'm sorry I wasn't a better sister. We were both just trying to survive her. Maybe now we can have an actual relationship. The wedding my mother tried to destroy became the turning point for multiple lives. Daniel and I built a marriage on the foundation of honesty she'd tried to undermine. We talked about everything, shared everything, maintained the transparency that makes relationships actually work. Richard became something like a father-in-law figure, present at holidays, celebrating our milestones, the protector who'd saved my wedding day and never asked for recognition. Victoria and I developed a real relationship for the first time in our lives, connected by shared experience of surviving our mother's manipulation. My father, freed from a marriage built on lies, seemed lighter somehow. He dated cautiously, rebuilt friendships that had atrophied under my mother's control, and became the grandfather our future children would actually enjoy visiting. My mother faced consequences I hadn't anticipated. The charity investigation resulted in criminal charges, fraud, embezzlement, filing false financial statements. She pleaded guilty to reduced charges, receiving probation and community service rather than prison time, but her reputation was destroyed. The social standing she'd cultivated for 40 years evaporated. The friends who'd valued her for her apparent sophistication abandoned her when the truth emerged. The image she'd constructed so carefully was revealed as the fiction it had always been. She moved to another state, I heard later. Started over somewhere no one knew her history. I hoped she'd use the opportunity for genuine change. I doubted she would. I saw her once more, 3 years after the wedding. She approached me in a grocery store, looking older and smaller than I remembered. The commanding presence that had dominated my childhood was gone, replaced by something diminished and uncertain. Vivian. Mom. I wanted to apologize. For the wedding. For everything. Okay. That's all? Just, okay? What do you want me to say? I spent my whole life being told I was the problem. I internalized your projection until I believed I was fundamentally dishonest, fundamentally broken. Now I know the truth, you were describing yourself, not me. I had reasons. You had excuses. You always had excuses. I don't need them anymore. Can we try to rebuild something? I don't think so. I built a life without you, a good life, an honest life. Including you in it would mean accepting your version of history, your justifications, your rewritten narrative. I can't do that anymore. I'm still your mother. You're the woman who tried to destroy my wedding. You're the woman who spent my childhood gaslighting me. You're the woman who projected her own dishonesty onto me until I thought something was fundamentally wrong with me. I met her eyes. Biology doesn't obligate me to maintain a relationship with someone who hurt me that consistently. I walked away. She didn't follow. The whispered words that sent my mother running from my wedding were never publicly revealed. The 200 guests constructed their own theories, a family emergency, a sudden illness, an unexplained conflict that never quite made sense. The story became one of those wedding mysteries that people discussed occasionally without ever reaching conclusions. What did Richard say to her remained a question without a public answer. But I knew. Daniel knew. Richard knew. And eventually, Victoria and my father knew. The truth about my mother, the truth she planned to weaponize against me, had become the weapon that destroyed her instead. Daniel and I celebrated our 5th anniversary last month. We have 2 children now, a daughter and a son. They'll never meet my mother, never learn the specific details of what happened at our wedding. But they'll grow up in a household built on honesty, where mistakes are acknowledged rather than projected onto others. Richard walked our daughter down the aisle at her imaginary wedding last week. She's 4, and she's already planning the ceremony. He played along with the solemnity of a man who understands that protecting family isn't limited by biology. "Thank you," I told him afterward, meaning more than the pretend wedding. "For everything. You deserve happiness," he said simply. "I just made sure no one took it from you." She grabbed the microphone at my wedding reception, determined to expose the truth about her difficult daughter. She'd rehearsed this moment, assembled her supporters, planned the public humiliation that would prove I was unworthy of my successful husband. She didn't notice Richard Harrington walking toward her, my husband's boss, the man who'd investigated her secrets as insurance against exactly this moment. What he whispered in her ear was brief: "I know about Marcus. I know about the charity money. I know about everything." She dropped the microphone and ran. The truth she'd planned to reveal about me was nothing compared to the truth about her, the affair, the embezzlement, the lifetime of lies. She'd tried to destroy my wedding. Instead, she destroyed herself. And I finally understood something I'd spent decades doubting: I was never the dishonest one. She was.